It's a Spotify podcast.
You pushed me down, thought I'd stay on the ground, counting me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first Rabbit Holes Deep Dive. Basically, we're going to analyze every time we have a rabbit holes from now on. We're going to deep dive into some of the subjects that we talk about. So here we go. Have you ever had the feeling that the world changed and nobody bothered to tell you? Maybe you've noticed it yourself. You apply for a job and never hear back. You call customer service and you're talking to a machine. You ask a computer to write an email, summarize a report, design a logo, write software, or even solve a legal problem, and within seconds, it produces something that would have taken a human hours to do. It almost feels like magic. But behind the magic, something much bigger is happening. Something that most people still haven't fully recognized. For years, we've been asking one question. Will artificial intelligence take our jobs? It's a dramatic question. It makes headlines. It sparks debates. It fuels fear. But what if, let me strike that. But what if it's still the wrong question? What if AI isn't simply replacing jobs? What if it's quietly changing the meaning of work itself? What if the biggest transformation isn't unemployment, but something far more subtle and far more difficult to see? Tonight, we're going down another rabbit hole. Welcome to Rabbit Holes Deep Dives. This isn't a news channel. This isn't a technology. And this isn't just another podcast chasing today's headlines. This is where we slow down, where we ask the biggest questions people are asking. Then we spend the time following the evidence. We read the books. We study the research. We examine the historical record. We compare competing viewpoints. And perhaps the most importantly, we challenge our own assumptions. Our goal isn't to tell you what to think. It's to help you think more clearly. Because in a world overshadowing with information, clear thinking has become one of the most valuable skills a person can possess. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's go down another rabbit hole. For more than 200 years, every major technological revolution has been accompanied by a familiar prediction. For more than 200 years, every major technological revolution has been accompanied by a familiar prediction. This time is different. During the Industrial Revolution, machines were going to replace craftsmen. When electricity arrived, entire industries were expected to disappear. Then computers entered the workforce. Millions feared that the end of office work. When the internet exploded, people predicted the death of retail, newspapers, and countless other professions. Some of those predictions were partly true. Many weren't. History teaches us something fascinating. Technology rarely destroys work overnight. Instead, it changes the work humans do. Farmers become factory workers become office workers become knowledge workers. Each transition created winners, losers, and entirely new careers that nobody could have imagined beforehand. But today's transition feels different. Not because machines are becoming stronger, because they're becoming smarter. For the first time, millions of people whose careers depended upon thinking, writing, designing, coding, researching, or analyzing information are watching computers perform parts of those same tasks That's something humanity has never experienced before. And naturally, fear follows uncertainty. Open social media, read the headlines, listen to the podcasts. You'll hear the same prediction repeated again and again. AI is coming for your job. It's a powerful story, but powerful stories aren't always accurate. Research paints a much more complicated picture. Instead of asking, will AI eliminate jobs? Many economists are asking something very different. What happens when AI automates tasks instead of entire occupations? That distinction changes everything. Think about your own job. Almost nobody spends 8 hours every day doing one single activity. A teacher doesn't only teach, they answer emails, attend meetings, grade papers, prepare lessons, talk with parents, complete administrative work, encourage students, resolve conflicts, mentor colleagues. One profession, dozens of different tasks. Now imagine artificial intelligence becomes exceptionally good at only 5 of those tasks. The teacher still exists, but the job has changed. That idea, known as job recomposition, may become one of the defining economic stories of our generation. Instead of replacing entire professions overnight, AI may quietly remove individual pieces of thousands of different jobs. Some of those tasks disappear forever. Others become easier. Others become more valuable because humans remain better at them. The job survives, but it doesn't look the same anymore. That sounds reassuring until you ask the next question. If every worker suddenly becomes 20% more productive, does the company keep the same numbers of employees? Or does it expect fewer people to produce the same work? That's where the conversation becomes much more complicated. Because the future of work isn't only about technology, it's about incentives, it's about management, it's about economics. And ultimately, it's about people. The evidence we're seeing today suggests that companies may not rush into dramatic AI layoffs. Instead, many may simply stop hiring. They replace fewer departing employees, they delay expanding teams, junior positions quietly disappear, contract work shrinks. The remaining employees are expected to accomplish more. No dramatic announcement, no breaking news, just a workforce that slowly becomes smaller, while expectations become larger. If that's true, then one of the first casualties of the AI era may not be experienced by professionals. It may be the people trying to enter the workforce for the very first time. And that leads us to one of the most fascinating and least discussed questions in this entire debate. What happens when artificial intelligence performs the beginner work that once taught beginners how to become experts? Because if nobody gets the opportunity to become a junior, where do tomorrow's seniors come from? That's the question we'll explore next. Imagine graduating from college 5 years from now. You've done everything people told you to do. You've earned the degree, built a portfolio, completed internships, learned the newest software, practiced your interview skills. You're ready, or at least you think you are. You open LinkedIn, you search for entry-level jobs, and something feels different. Not because companies aren't hiring, but because they're hiring fewer beginners, quietly, without making headlines. One of the most overlooked changes artificial intelligence may bring isn't massive unemployment. It's the disappearance of the first step. For generations, every profession has relied on. Let me strike that. One of the most overlooked changes artificial intelligence may bring isn't massive unemployment. It's the disappearance of the first step. For generations, every profession has relied upon the beginners: junior programmers, junior accountants, junior analysts, junior recruiters, junior paralegals, junior marketers. The work wasn't glamorous. In fact, it often involved repetitive tasks: writing documentation, reviewing contracts, summarizing reports, testing software, scheduling interviews, researching information, cleaning spreadsheets, sorting data. Nobody dreamed of spending an entire career doing those things. But that was never the point. Those tasks were training. They were how you learned. They were the apprenticeship that slowly transformed beginners into experts. Now imagine an AI system that performs much of the work in seconds. At first, that sounds like an incredible news. Senior employees become more productive. Projects move faster. Companies save money. Customers receive quicker service. Everyone wins, right? Not necessarily. Because if the beginner's work disappears, where does the experience come from? Think about becoming a pilot. Would you trust someone to fly a commercial airliner if they'd never spent years flying smaller aircraft? Of course not. Experience matters. Medicine works the same way. No surgeon begins by performing the most difficult operation. Law works the same way as well. Engineers, architects, teachers, every profession depends on a gradual transfer of knowledge. So here's the uncomfortable question. If artificial intelligence performs many of the tasks that once taught beginners, how do beginners become experts? Researchers have become calling this an apprenticeship problem. Not because knowledge disappears, but because opportunities to gain the knowledge become harder to find. And history suggests something fascinating. Every technological revolution creates new jobs, but not always for the same people, and not always quickly enough. Think back to the Industrial Revolution. Millions of agricultural jobs disappeared. New factory jobs emerged, but those transitions were very painful. Communities changed, families relocated, entire ways of life disappeared. Today's transition may follow a similar pattern, except instead of replacing physical labor, we're transforming knowledge work. For decades, society made an implicit promise. For decades, society made an implicit promise. Study hard, earn a degree, develop valuable knowledge, and your future would be secure. Artificial intelligence doesn't necessarily break that promise, but it changes its meaning. Knowledge alone may not longer be enough because information has become abundant. Judgment has become scarce. That may be one of the defining characteristics of the next economy. The people who thrive don't simply know more facts. They'll know when the facts are trustworthy, when the AI is correct, when it's confidently wrong, when the human conversation matters more than an algorithm, when empathy solves a problem that automation never could. Those become competitive advantages. Ironically, the more intelligent our machines become, the more valuable, distinctively human abilities may become. Curiosity, adaptability, communication, leadership, creativity, ethics, trust. Those skills have always mattered, but they may soon become the difference between merely using artificial intelligence and working alongside it. There's another consequence almost nobody talks about. What happens to mentorship? Imagine a young software developer joining a company. 10 years ago, they might have spent months reviewing code written by experienced engineers, learning patterns, making mistakes, receiving feedback, growing. Now imagine an AI writes the first draft, generates the first documentation, suggests the architecture, finds many of the bugs. The young developer becomes productive much faster. But are they becoming wiser? That's a completely different question. Efficiency and wisdom are not the same thing. Productivity and understandings are not the same thing. And perhaps that's one of the greatest challenges of the AI era. How do we preserve human learning? When machines can perform so much of the practice, maybe the future isn't about replacing people. Maybe it's about deciding which experiences remain essential for becoming fully human. Because no matter how intelligent technology becomes, someone still has to make the difficult decisions. Someone still has to accept responsibility. Someone still has to earn trust. Artificial intelligence can generate answers, but wisdom still has to be learned. And that brings us to another surprising discovery. Even when AI makes workers dramatically more productive, that doesn't necessarily mean society becomes more prosperous. In fact, history suggests something far more complicated. Let's keep digging. What if I told you that one of the greatest economic mysteries of the last 50 years is happening all over again? Imagine walking into your office tomorrow morning. Instead of spending 8 hours writing reports, answering emails, reviewing contracts, building presentations, or creating software, you finish everything before lunch. Artificial intelligence has doubled your productivity. You smile. Your company smiles. Everyone celebrates. But then, something unexpected happens. Your paycheck doesn't change. You don't work fewer hours. You don't receive more vacation. You don't retire early. Instead, your manager walks into your office and says, "Great work! Now let's see if you can do even more." Welcome to the productivity paradox. For centuries, economists have believed something that seemed perfectly logical. If workers become more productive, society becomes wealthier. Higher productivity should mean higher wages, lower prices, more prosperity, a better quality of life, and over long periods of history, that's often been true. Electricity transformed factories. Naomi, strike that. Higher productivity should mean higher wages, lower prices, more prosperity, a better quality of life. And over long periods of history, that often has been true. Electricity transformed factories, computers transformed offices, the internet transformed communication. Each innovation eventually made humanity richer. But here's the word that often gets overlooked. Each innovation eventually made humanity richer. But here's the word that often gets overlooked. Eventually. Technology rarely transforms an economy overnight. Think about computers. By the early 1980s, they were already appearing in offices across the world. Executives bought them, governments bought them, universities bought them. Everyone knew computers were the future. Yet something strange happened. National productivity statistics barely moved. Economists became puzzled. They coined a phrase that has become famous. You can see the computer's age everywhere, except in the productivity statistics. It wasn't that computers failed. It's that businesses needed years, sometimes decades, to redesign how they actually worked. Old habits remained. Paper forms became digital forms. Instead of eliminating bureaucracy, many organizations simply digitized it. The technology changed quickly. Institutions changed slowly. Artificial intelligence may be following that same path. Today, researchers can point to extraordinary examples. Doctors diagnosing certain conditions faster. Lawyers reviewing documents in minutes instead of hours. Doctors diagnosing certain conditions faster. Lawyers reviewing documents in minutes instead of hours. Software developers completing projects more quickly. Writers generating first drafts almost instantly. Customer service teams responding to thousands of requests simultaneously. Those improvements are real. But here's the question that matters. Who benefits? If one of the employees become twice as productive, does that company hire more people? Does it reduce prices, raise wages, increase profits, or simply expect everyone to work at a higher pace? Technology doesn't answer those questions. People do. Executives do. Boards of directors do. Governments do. Markets do. In other words, the future of work isn't determined by artificial intelligence alone. It's determined by the decisions human beings make about artificial intelligence. That realization completely changes the conversation because suddenly this isn't just a story about computers. It's a story about incentives, power, ownership, and trust. Imagine two companies. Both adopt exactly at the same AI system. Company A tells its employees the technology will handle repetitive work so you can spend more time solving difficult problems, serving customers, and developing new ideas. Company B says, we've discovered we can achieve the same output with 30% fewer employees. Same technology, completely different outcomes. That's why the debate isn't simply about what AI can do, it's about what organizations choose to do with it. And history tells us those choices matter enormously. Sometimes technological revolutions create entirely new industries. Sometimes they increase inequality before society catches up. Sometimes they strengthen workers. Sometimes they weaken bargaining power. There isn't one inevitable future. There are many possible futures. And the decisions we make over the next decade may determine which one becomes reality. There's another hidden problem. Imagine every business suddenly becomes 20% more efficient. Imagine every business suddenly becomes 20% more efficient. If every competitor saves money at the same time, those savings don't automatically stay inside the company. Competition pushes prices downward. Margins shrink, customers expect more, the advantage disappears, which means organizations start searching for the next efficiency gain. And the cycle begins again. This is why many economists believe artificial intelligence isn't simply another productivity tool. It's an amplifier. It amplifies good leadership. It amplifies poor leadership. It amplifies creativity. It amplifies mistakes. It amplifies the consequences of organizational decisions. Technology itself remains neutral. The outcomes are deeply human. And perhaps that's the biggest misunderstanding in today's conversation. People often ask, what will AI do to us? A better question might be, what will we choose to do with AI? Because history suggests that technology doesn't determine the future. Human beings do. And that leads us to perhaps the most emotional part of this entire story. Because beneath the economy Beneath the technology, beneath the statistics, lies something more personal: our identity. Who are we? When the work that defined us begins to change, that's where the rabbit hole becomes deeply human. And that's where we're going next. Let's stop talking about computers for just a moment, because I don't think artificial intelligence is what people are actually afraid of. Think back to the first time you heard someone say, AI is coming for your job. How did you feel? Curious? Excited? Skeptical? Or did something tighten just a little bit in your chest? That reaction matters, because before we ever analyze technology, our brains analyze survival. Psychologists have known decades that human beings experience losses much more intensely than gains. Imagine I offered you two choices. The first, I'll hand you $100. The second, I'll take $100 from you. Financially, the amounts are identical. Emotionally, they're worlds apart. Losing something hurts far more than gaining the exact same thing feels good. Researchers call this loss aversion. And it may explain the conversations about AI that becomes emotional so quickly. Notice something. When people hear artificial intelligence create entirely new industries, most shrug. But when they hear artificial intelligence could eliminate your profession, they stop scrolling. Fear captures attention. Hope requires patience. Our brains evolved that way. For most of human history, ignoring danger was far more costly than overlooking opportunity. If our ancestors failed to notice food, they might go hungry. If they failed to notice a predator, they may not survive. That ancient survival system still operates inside every one of us. Only now, the predators aren't always lions. Sometimes they're headlines. Sometimes they're algorithms. Sometimes they're uncertainty. But I think there's something even more deeper happening. Because work isn't only how we earn money. It's how many of us answer one simple question: who am I? When you meet someone, what's one of the first questions people ask? So, what do you do? Not, what do you enjoy? Not, what do you believe? Not, what kind of person are you becoming? They ask, what do you do? Without realizing it, our occupations become part of our identity. I'm an engineer. I'm a nurse. I'm a teacher. I'm a mechanic. I'm a programmer. I'm an accountant. Eventually, those words stop describing what we do. They begin describing who we believe we are. Now imagine hearing that machines can perform many of the tasks that you define yourself with in your profession. It isn't just your paycheck that feels threatened. It's your identity. And identity is incredibly difficult to let go of. That's why this conversation becomes emotional. Not because people are irrational, because they're human. Researchers have also begun studying something called technostress. Okay. Naomi, strike that. Not because people are irrational, because they're human. Researchers have also begun studying something called technostress. It's an interesting word because it doesn't describe people who hate technology. In many cases, the very same professionals who are excited about AI also report anxiety about keeping up with it. Believe me, I know. Think about how quickly everything changes. How AI models appear almost every month. and they're getting faster. New software, new tools, new workflows, new expectations. People aren't simply learning a new skill. They're trying to adapt to an environment that keeps changing beneath their feet. That creates a different kind of exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, cognitive exhaustion. You finally feel competent, and then the rules change again. Imagine learning an entirely new language, only to discover everyone has already started speaking another one. No wonder so many people feel overwhelmed. And here's something fascinating. Throughout history, every major technological revolution has produced this same emotional pattern. First, fear. Then resistance. Then adaptation. Then eventually acceptance. The printing press, the steam engine, electricity, the automobile, the personal computer, the internet. Every generation believed their transition was unprecedented. In some ways, they were right. But humanity adopted. Not perfectly, not without hardship, but we adopted. Artificial intelligence may prove no different. That doesn't mean the challenges aren't real. They are. Communities will change. Careers will change. Entire industries may be reshaped. But history also reminds us that human beings possess something extraordinary. That human beings possess something extraordinary. The ability to learn, to reinvent ourselves, to discover value where none existed before. Perhaps the greatest competitive advantage in the age of artificial intelligence won't be intelligence alone. It will be adaptability, curiosity, humility, the willingness to say, I don't know yet, but I'm willing to learn. Ironically, those are qualities no machine can install inside us. They're choices, human choices. And that realization leads us to perhaps the most important question of all. If artificial intelligence changes everything, what kind of person should we become? That's where this journey ends and where the next one begins. If today's episode made you think, don't stop here. Read the research, study the history, listen to people who disagree with you, question the headlines, question the experts, question your assumptions, and question mine. Because Rabbit Hole's Deep Dives isn't about handing you a conclusion. It's about following the evidence. Even when the evidence leads somewhere uncomfortable, the future artificial intelligence has not been written. It will be shaped by engineers, business owners, workers, educators, lawmakers, and ordinary people making decisions one day at a time. The central question is no longer simply whether AI can perform the work. It is whether we will use that capacity to expand human potential, or merely to reduce the number of humans required. Will greater productivity create greater freedom, or simply greater expectations? Will artificial intelligence strengthen workers, or weaken their ability to negotiate? Will the people creating the value share in the rewards, or will the gains become concentrated in fewer hands? Those questions cannot be answered by technology alone. They will be answered by the values we defend, and the institutions we build, and the decisions we refuse to surrender to someone else. Maybe artificial intelligence will eliminate certain jobs. Maybe it will create careers we cannot yet imagine. Most likely, it will do both. But history suggests that the people most prepared for change are not the people who correctly predict every detail. They are the people who remain curious, who continue learning, who question certainty, and who refuse to let fear make every decision for them. So when someone tells you the future is guaranteed, in either direction, slow down. Ask what evidence supports the claim. Ask what assumptions are being made. Ask what benefits from the story. Ask what has been measured and what's merely been predicted. Because the greatest danger may not be artificial intelligence itself. It may be surrounding our judgment before the future even arrives. Thank you for joining me for this first ever Rabbit Holes Deep Dive. If this episode challenged and changed the way you think, share it with someone who is asking these same questions. And let me know which subject we should research next. Because every answer opens another question. And every question leads us farther down the rabbit hole. My name is Leroy Nellis, and this is Resilience Radio. Godspeed, stand for the Constitution, and never surrender your ability to think for yourself. God bless, and good night. Hey everybody, I wanted to sit down with you today and talk about something we've been working on behind the scenes for quite a while now. First, I want to thank you. Whether you've been here from the beginning or you just found the channel recently, I want you to know that I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. Every comment, every conversation, every suggestion, every word of encouragement has helped shape what Resilience Radio is becoming. This isn't just my channel anymore. It's about a community. And because of that, I wanted you to hear these changes directly from me. Over the last several months, we've been doing something a little unusual. We've been studying our analytics almost obsessively. Not just YouTube analytics, but the analytics coming from Naomi, the AI production system we've been building from the ground up. We've been asking questions like, what videos do people come here for? What keeps people watching? What topics naturally fit together? And what happens when we mix very little types of content on the same channel? After looking at thousands of data points, we came to one conclusion. It's time to let each series become a very best version of itself. So today, I'm excited to announce that Rabbit Holes is becoming its own dedicated YouTube channel. Rabbit Holes deserves its own home. It's where we dive into mysteries, history, unsolved questions, and rabbit holes. Strange events, forgotten stories, and all of those fascinating topics that make us lose track of time. By giving Rabbit Holes its own channel, YouTube can better understand who those videos are for. Our AI can learn from much cleaner data, and we can build something truly special for people who love those deep dives. Resilience Radio will continue doing what it has always meant to do, help people understand themselves through psychology,
You pushed me down, thought I'd stay on the ground, counting me out like the numbers didn't matter. But pressure builds diamonds in the dark, and I've been sharpening my edge in the chatter. Every scar turned into strategy, every setback fueled my clarity. I took the hits, learned the game, turned my losses into flame. Now I'm coming back strong, and you'll remember my name. I'm rising through the fire.